TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app. Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors. And as you can see, I'm smiling ear to ear. I'm still pinching myself because good friend, colleague in his ECSI, Lou Finicaro. We're talking UFC 303 here. He is going to be coming on weekly to break down everything going on in the UFC. He's going to talk about some of his plays that he likes and why, and then, of course, where you can get the premium plays. It's a match made in heaven, and we couldn't be happier. And I'm going to be learning a lot every week as I got my notepad and pen right here. But first and foremost, of course, a shout-out to our proud sponsor and partnership with WagerWire. If you have not downloaded this app, please head on over to Google Play, download it. It's free. After that, we'll take over from there. If you're looking to join the amazing WagerWire team, send an email to affiliate@wagerwire.com. Tell them JD from ECSI sent you. Travis, Zach, Amber, Holly, the rest of that team will take good care of you. So without further ado, the star of this show, Mr. Gamb Lou himself. Good afternoon, Lou.
Jeff, how you doing? Thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking about my passion, which is men and women fighting in a cage.
I don't know where to start. I know this was considered going to be the card of the year, and I was going to start by saying no Connor, no Chandler, no problem. Take us back to when this card was put together and the uproar, the like OMG, Connor's back in the octagon, to where it sits right now.
Well, what I'll say is this 303 event is International Fight Week for the UFC. So each year around the 4th of July, the UFC rolls out its big guns, puts a huge card together from T-Mobile in Las Vegas, gets the biggest name stars for a huge production. There's fans, there's media events, there's all kinds of activity in Vegas going on for this. Because McGregor is such a lightning rod, he definitely draws. There's no doubting that. And the UFC has been willing to put up with some inconsistency in his personality, if you will, to try and strike lightning in the bottle and put those seats, rear ends in the seats, have Connor featured and sell. After all, the UFC's owned by Endeavor, a entertainment company. So McGregor and Michael Chandler were scheduled for so long, but what happens with fighters, and this is boxers too, and it's generational, is when you take a talented athlete that has come from nothing, and in relatively immediate fashion, they become rich with money and get to the spoils of life, like private jets, Veuve Clicquot champagne, and silk sheets. They become corroded. Mr. McGregor, as apt as he was as a fighter at 145 and 155 pounds, was going to take this fight at 170. And 170 reflects the corrodents that have already gotten into his system because he's no longer the fighter he was, in my opinion, yet he still has the ability to draw. So he breaks a little baby toe, and many will tell you that's no need to cancel a fight. But honestly, it's probably semi-reasonable to cancel the fight. The bigger issue is that Mr. McGregor has become relatively flaky at least in my opinion, the UFC has had to deal with not only him, but other fighters, various personalities, and the unbelievable amount of injuries and cancellations for whatever reason. The UFC is extremely deft at fulfilling or turning a negative into a positive. In the case of this fight, to try and answer your question, or this fight card, they lost McGregor Chandler, yes. They replace it with 2 fights, Pereira Prochaska 2, they fought in November, and then the co-main event, Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez as a co-main event, 5-round fight. And in essence, what the UFC did was turn a negative by missing and losing McGregor into a tremendous positive, because the card now has a co-main event and a main event that are better than what we did have. That's much more compelling to fight fans, and the fights are going to be absolute fire.
Not being the expert yet, hopefully someday in UFC, I did see the opening number of Connor and Chandler at about a pick'em. Were you surprised at the opening number? Was initially any like shock, or did you think that was a fair opening number?
I thought it was a fair opening number, yes, because I don't trust McGregor's habits. I don't trust his dedication to the sport, and I don't trust him at 170 when he did his best fighting at 55 and 45. Michael Chandler, that's too big for him as well. But Chandler's made for McGregor because he's going to go right out there and stand toe-to-toe with him. That's what McGregor needs. I can tell you that my tactic or my advice would have been that if you were a Connor fan, you wanted to jump that 110 as soon as it was out there, and it stayed around it. That number was stagnant and didn't really move because of the unknowns with McGregor. But if you were a McGregor fan and this fight was going to come off in a month or 6 weeks, I'd tell you, hurry up and take the McGregor price now, because as the closer you get to the event, the more the Irish droves would be coming in, and the public as well. They'd be betting McGregor and driving that price up. It's very similar to NFL and a favorite. On Monday, if you want a favorite, you'd better take them Monday, because by Friday, they're going to be a point or 2 higher.
We got about 4 fights that we're going to break down. And then obviously, before we wrap up, we're going to tell everyone where they can go get your main card and your VIP, your premium selections. Of course, our Simon and Oliveira. I have DraftKings up in front of me. Currently, Ricky Simon minus 250. You can get Oliveira at plus 205. And under over of 2.5 juiced minus 115 both sides, Lou.
Yes, and so please excuse me, Jeff, that some of these guys have funny names. I'm going to call him as he likes to call him. It's Simone, but it's spelled Simon, so excuse the correction. Ricky Simone, short, squat, a veteran of the UFC, very, very powerful fighter. He is primarily a wrestling-based fighter, and he's had tremendous momentum up until recently, where he's lost his last 2 fights, albeit against elite competition. He's 31 years old, and in this fight, he takes on a young man coming from Brazil from the Contender Series. So advantage Simone as far as UFC experience and who he's been in the cage with. However, the other young man, Oliveira, that he's going to be fighting against has got a 3-inch height advantage. He's 3 years younger than is Ricky Simone, and he's got an inch reach advantage. Height and reach together equate to advantage in stand-up fights primarily, and that's exactly what Oliveira wants to do. He needs to keep this standing and keep Simone, the shorter fighter, on the outside. And if this fight stays standing, Oliveira is as live a dog as you can find at a plus 200 or just higher price. Simone, the veteran, his task will be to close distance, get inside, press Oliveira against the fence, get his hands on him, grope him, clasp him, take him to the floor, and get on top. So where this fight transpires and takes place is going to tell us who's winning. On the feet, Oliveira could ice Simone. He's been finished with strikes, namely in his last fight against Mario Bautista. And Oliveira, a BJJ practitioner, yes, but kryptonite to BJJ is world-class wrestling, and that's surely where Simone wants to take this. I tend to think that Oliveira is live in this spot, and we saw Ricky Simone open much less than the current price. He opened 175, and so now we've seen some money come in on him, and he's now 245. So I would be, if you were an Oliveira fan, I'd be patient and let that number mature and fester before the fights, because you might get another dime or 15 cents out of him.
I like where your eyes are. Gee, nothing better than, starting the night for me with a plus 215, maybe a 225. Nothing gets better than that. It's those minus 245s, minus 250s that you got to sweat the juice. So
you won't hear those from me. I don't bet those fights. If I do use something like that, and we'll get to that in the next fight, I'll tell you exactly how I address favorites.
Well, going to the next fight, I can see what you're talking about. Peyton Talbot versus Giannis. Is it Gamiro?
Gamori. Like Sodom and Gamori.
Gamori. Talbot minus 1,600 currently on the DK Sportsbook. Gamori plus 900 and over 1.5 right now, Lou, minus 180 or the under at plus 140.
Yeah, Talbot's an up-and-coming talent, and he's on this card for a reason. He's only 2 fights deep in his UFC career, but the UFC has him tagged as a future superstar, which is exactly what I believe he's going to be. So he's on this card for eyeballs to see him and to catch lightning in a bottle for the UFC so that they can put him in more high-exposure fights. Gamori is a fighter from France. He's got experience over Talbot. However, as far as size and everything is concerned, Talbot's an inch taller. He is 4 years younger at 25, has a short reach advantage. Gamori is a journeyman fighter at best. This could be called, or at least I'm going to call it, a setup fight so that Talbot shines. Talbot opens 298. Okay, and by the time we caught up with him, his price was minus 455. This is 4 or 5 weeks ago. And in another fight card, there was a young man named Chase Hooper that was fighting a veteran. Hooper was plus 120. DraftKings allows you to look at not only the menu for fights this week, but future fights. And so the game we played is we took Chase Hooper plus 120. And we parlayed him 4 weeks ago into Talbot minus 455. Our return now is 1 unit to return 1.69 units on Talbot, who's now a minus 1,600 favorite. That's the game I'm playing at gamblou.com.
Man, we should have met a long, long time ago. You're talking my language. Great eyes there. I absolutely love the creativity. I try to preach and educate that daily, Lou, and something like that, it just brings smiles to my face. Oh, man, I love the creativity. Great job.
Well, if they're going to offer us the menu, listen, for a while when DraftKings was here in Phoenix, I travel to Vegas often and meet with the guys that do this in Las Vegas. We're all friends in this community. And I was boasting to them that I don't use DraftKings or FanDuel or Caesars or any of the MGM or any of the national outfits. And they looked at me like I was stark raving mad. And they chewed me out. And I said, well, why? The menu. I said, well, I came back from Vegas and open up a couple of accounts. You know, they fund you pretty well if you're a new client. So I opened up a couple of accounts and I saw the vast array. The menu that they have is unbelievable. And it's my opinion, being an old school guy, when you're putting out bets for one fight and there might be 30 different kinds of derivatives and bets on that one fight, I'm at a great advantage because I study this as well. I don't have to bet all of the 30 selections. I can shoot with a rifle and decide which one I may determine I have advantage in. And so if these people are going to give me this kind of a menu, I'm going to work my rear end off, Jeff, and I'm going to find advantage and take advantage of it for my clients.
Amen to that. And thank God, living in Arizona versus Vegas, so no DK obviously in Vegas, but Arizona is wide open for DK now, correct?
Yeah, it is. We have them all here, and it's just, it's been an eye-opener. I love it now. I'm an old school guy. When I got out of college, I got buddies in Louisiana, Chicago, California, Florida. And so that was where I was doing a lot of my investing before legalization, was through small operators throughout the country, because I could get advantage. If LSU was playing UCLA, I'd get one price in New Orleans, another price in LA, and that's how an old guy like me would gain advantage. Now I can get that advantage legally right at my fingertips, just by shopping one store, and of course I shop well more than one store.
Third fight here. Let me pull that up here. Here we go. Ian Machado Gary versus Michael Page, currently at the DK Sportsbooks. Machado Gary -148, Page +124, over 2.5, Lou -210, under 2.5 +160. They do have an optional one where you can get under 3.5 at +120. Actually, I'm sorry.
That's a points handicap.
Okay, over 3.5 +120, and then +3.5 -165.
Right. They offer points handicaps now. I don't play that often unless I feel compelled to. And in this fight, we have two Europeans, two loudmouth, big mouth, overconfident Europeans. I don't like either of them personality-wise, but we're not talking about personality right now. We're talking about fight ability. Page, 36 years old, Michael Venom Page, a very flamboyant, wild striker, extremely unorthodox. He throws flying knees, spinning elbows. He'll look like he's going to pick up a dime off of the floor and throw a shot up at you. I mean, you never know what's coming from this guy. And he is wildly athletic. And for 36, he's still fast and really adroit on his feet. That said, he doesn't have much power. He came from Bellator, where he was a good fighter and actually an elite fighter in that organization, but I'm not quite sure that that translates to the UFC. He's had one UFC fight against a guy named Kevin Holland, who's very shy on IQ, no power, and Page won that fight, which propelled him into this fight. On the other side, Ian Gary is a Conor McGregor wannabe. And by wannabe, he's tall, he's long, he's blonde, he's Irish, he talks like McGregor, he acts like McGregor. And I wish I could tell you that he couldn't fight like McGregor, but he can. He's a black belt in BJJ. He trains in Brazil. He's fast. He's quick. He has a little power, but he can also grapple. He's very well-rounded, whereas Page is singularly dimensioned as a striker. In this fight, I happen to think that the line, once we watch this fight, we'll wonder how we caught Gary at such a fair price. Now, this fight opened Page -115, Gary -105. Again, we caught Gary at -130, but used him in a parlay, so have him in a positive position. But currently, for those listening, Gary's -148. That's still a very fair price for a guy that I think is going to not be enamored or intimidated by Page's athleticism or his speed. In fact, Gary will be the faster man, the stronger man. I think he hunts him down, muffles or mutes the distance for Page, takes that distance away. And if I'm advising him, we take him to the floor, get on top of him, and rain ground and pound and do damage in that capacity. In this 3-round fight, I don't have a strong lean over or under, but I do believe pretty strongly that Gary's the right side here. He's the more complete mixed martial artist with more UFC experience and the more pedigreed athlete, in my opinion.
What's Gary's record?
Oh, you're going to ask me a question that I don't know, but I can tell you that. His professional record, I'll pull up here. I use a web page called Tapology. It's very good, and they give you great information. Machado Gary is 14-0 as a professional. Page 22-2. Now, again, as far as Gary is concerned in the UFC, he's had 7 UFC fights, all ascending talents each way. His last 2, Neil Magny and Jeff Neal, very competent fighters. In fact, I used Jeff Neal in Gary's last fight against Gary. I probably let my disdain for loudmouth Irish kids. I don't mind Irish kids. My mom's Irish, but I don't like loudmouths. And Gary, next to loudmouth in the encyclopedia, is a picture of Gary. He's very confident, very overconfident. That said, he can back it up. And I went with Neil, a very strong Texas fighter, very well-rounded mixed martial artist. Gary beat him pretty handily in that fight. And Gary's going to look to do the same to Michael Venom Page. And so I really think what you have here is maybe a little bit of a difference in class. I don't think Michael Venom Page has been in with the same kind of talent that Gary's been in with, nor do I judge him to be the same kind of mixed martial artist that I view Gary as.
For the novice, for someone trying to get involved in the UFC, to week by week start to make their own notes, obviously follow certain sports books, follow web pages like you just gave us, Tapology. Now, do you make mental notes on what you expect for this fight from Gary based upon what you've seen so far? And then after the fight, I thought he'd do this, didn't do this. Is it all right here? And then you put pen to pad and move on to the next fight? There it is.
It's all right here. And so I model these fights. I tracked all 760 UFC fighters, height, age, weight, leg reach, arm reach, all of that matters. I understand what kind of fighter they are, because if you're a stand-up fighter, your weakness may be a wrestler. And if you're Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling is surely something they have to address. If you're a world-class wrestler, which is really, I've asked numerous mixed martial arts coaches, if you had to create the perfect fighter, what do you start with? Every one of them will tell you a wrestler. And they'll tell you a wrestler because those guys run around in rubber suits all day long, cutting weight, and they work their rear ends off 24/7, 365 to get a 15-minute match somewhere. And so we're seeing, especially in America, wrestlers do very well because we have college wrestling. However, what you have to teach a wrestler how to do is evade strikes effectively. Because some wrestlers have never been popped in the chin, and they can go out like a mackerel right away. And so they have to learn how to evade strikes, and they also have to learn how to throw strikes, because that's not innate to them either. So even the wrestler has an evolution. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter, they are awesome at using your aggression against you. You get a big, huge 300-pound barroom bouncer to go after a 185-pound Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. That Jiu-Jitsu specialist, as long as the barroom bouncer is aggressive and comes right at him is going to tie him up and have him crying to his mama in 5 minutes or less because he's able to use that aggression against him. Then there's your Russians, and the Russians are world-class wrestling vice grips, very much similar to American wrestlers, only maybe on steroids. And I don't literally mean on steroids, although Russians do have ways of circumventing the rules, if you will. But usually they just practice. And you see a lot of Dagestani fighters, Georgian fighters do really, really well because of that wrestling background. So anybody getting into the sport, the first thing you have to do is love it. If you don't love it, it's going to be hard. If you love to make money and you like to invest in sports, then probably some of that love is already there. But I can't tell you how much work I put into this every single week. In fact, at 2:30 Eastern time, the fighter interviews started each week on Thursday. They interview each set of fighters on the main card. I watch every one of those interviews, and when I get finished with our dialogue here today, I will pull those up and I will watch each fighter in their interviews. You cannot imagine how much you can garner by spending the time to do it right. As well, I usually do not come out with my final releases until Friday late. And you see all kinds of people in my industry throwing out picks on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Well, weigh-ins are Friday morning, 9 a.m. local time, wherever the fight is. And to me, there's no way, unless I feel compelled in a fight that isn't really contingent on guys' weights, meaning both are professionals, both have done this before, I've seen them in action before, very much like Venom Page and Gary. They're not going to have issues on the scale, but I always wait till after weigh-ins because funny stuff happens at weigh-ins.
And speaking of Russians, last Saturday, a young up and coming, I think he was 12-0 before the fight, and he ended up winning second round, maybe red hair last Saturday.
Right here in on the East Coast or in the UFC?
In the UFC. One of the later.
I have last week's card right here. Rinat Faritnikov fought a Danish fighter named Dalby. Now, those fights were in Abu Dhabi, and if that fight's anywhere else, Dalby wins that fight. Faritnikov won it because he was in his own backyard. He's a vice grip wrestler, but he tends to tire, and that's exactly what happened in this fight. And I was very much on the right side of that. We had taken Faritnikov, who was minus 360 or so in the fight. We took him to win via decision minus 110. So I'm always I won't play a lot of money to win one unit, but I'll play 1 unit to win 1 unit or 1 unit to win more than 1 unit. So we were able to get Faritnikov down to minus 110, but he had to win via decision. And I did this on that fight because it was in his home country, or at least in his region. And he got a little home cooking there because the other kid fought very well, Nicholas Dalby.
I agree. Last one here for you. Brian Ortega, Diego Lopes. Currently, Diego Lopes minus 142. Brian Ortega plus 120 at the DK Sportsbook. Over-unders, under 2.5, Lou, minus 140. Over 2.5 plus 110. I guess they're telling me these two are going to come out guns a-blazing, huh?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, I comprehensively disagree with that total. This is a featherweight fight, 145-pound guys. Ortega is a world-class featherweight talent. He just got done beating a guy named Yair Rodriguez twice. Ortega is experienced, been in with the elite of the division, and has seen it all. He's also very well-rounded. Started out mostly a grappler and had to encompass striking prowess, which he's done really, really well over the course of the last 5 years. Lopez is a Brazilian fighter that comes equipped with Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but he now trains in Mexico. So he's got that Mexican heart and Mexican chin. I mean, Mexican fighters, and I went to school in Tucson. I live in Phoenix. I consider myself a Mexican fight fan, just from my heritage here. Mexican fighters don't begin to fight until you hit them right flush in the face and wobble them, and then the fight starts. And Lopez is very much like that. He's very well-rounded. And in this fight, he's younger, he's taller, and he's longer. So there are advantages for him. However, this is his this will be his fourth UFC fight. His first fight he took on short notice against a vice grip Russian wrestler, and he got beat. And that's a feather in his cap because he had no notice and no training for it, and he did really well. His next 3 fights in the UFC were first-round finishes. You finish people in the UFC, and you're going to get lightning bolted to the top, and that's what Lopez has shown to be a finisher. That said, his level of competition was less than great, surely less than what Ortega has competed against his last 7, 8, 9 fights. And so this is a huge step up for Lopez, who, by the way, opened as a plus 130 dog. Ortega opened minus 150. What do we have now? A complete switch of the lines. And why is that? Because recency. Most people believe that what they've seen out of Lopez, and it's good. Make no mistake about it. But to me, this is a PhD in MMA fight, and I think that Lopez might be biting off a little more than he can chew here with Ortega, and I think this is going to be a really compelling fight, and I do lean to Ortega here, especially now given, let's always respect our line maker, huh, Jeff? They line him at minus 150. Now I'm getting him plus 120, plus 130. I'm all about it.
I learned, in just over 30 minutes, I've learned so much. I got 3 pages of notes right here, and this is just our first show of many here. What I really like to do and how I like to close out the show, though, is I want you to tell the world, A, where they can find you. Obviously, they know they can find you on X at Gamb Lou. But I want you to tell the world where your website is, what you have to offer, and, of course, where they can get all your picks for the UFC.
Well, thank you, Jeff. My webpage is gamblou.com. And on that webpage, you can go there and see testimonials from people in the industry that will tell you what they think about me. I'll also give you a mission statement. I'll tell you what I do. And I want to just summarize that I shoot with a rifle, not a shotgun. I serve my clients. I don't serve me. And anyone that's betting or serving clients and betting on or investing on every single sport under the sun is serving themselves, not their clients. I only work the UFC, College World Series, which just completed, NHL playoffs only, which just completed, and the NFL. Those 4 sports are all I work on. I try and narrow focus to increase expertise. If your kid has a sore throat, you don't take them to an orthopedic surgeon, you take them to an ear, nose, and throat. And if your wife gets in a car wreck, you don't take her to a litigation attorney, you take her to an attorney that specializes. In today's business, it's about specialization, narrow focus to increase expertise. That's exactly what I do. When it comes to the UFC, I do 2 podcasts. The first podcast comes out every single Monday. There's a UFC card. It's called the Sneak Teep Podcast. It's available on any podcast platform. And there I take a look at the opening lines for each fight card, monitor the movement, and make comments on what's happened so far from a Monday perspective, 5 days, 6 days before the fights go off. I offer a free release on that podcast every week. So far this year, we're 11, 6, and 2, plus 5.76 units. So a guy that's betting $10 each on each one of those fights is up almost $60. And if you bet more, you're up more. Then the second podcast that comes out is on Friday after the weigh-ins, as we discussed, when I have all my information gathered and then come out with my final releases. That's called the Bout Business Podcast, BOUT, the play on a fight, which is a fight about, and it's the Bout Business Podcast. That's available only at gamblou.com. And on the top of the gamblou.com webpage, there's tabs for hockey, College World Series, Bout Business Podcast. Hit that link and you can see all the information that is necessary for one to consider being a member. As always, my email, lou@gamblou.com, is plastered all over the webpage. I'll always take comments, criticisms from anyone, questions. If somebody's got a future bet they want to know what to do with, and they look me up, I'm always here to try and help. I really am an encourager to try and get people into this arena, but to get them in and give them a chance to do well. And I've been doing this for 45 years plus and love what I do. And I hope that shows.
Well, we can obviously, you can hear the, not just the enthusiasm, but the love of the sport and love what you're doing. For me, and like yourself, this is not a job. We don't punch in, 8 to 4, 8 to 5. We sleep when we fall asleep. It's not work. It's a passion, a dedication. And again, we are just so super stoked to have you here on board. I know tomorrow you jump in the car, you head out to Vegas. Friday, make sure you say hi to Mitch and Paulie on VSiN. Saturday, you'll be at the fights. I don't think I'd be doing my job if I didn't let you officially close with the final thoughts, with not just the Vols beating the Aggies 6-5 in that College World Series, but I think more the shocker and obviously the headliner is the Texas A&M coach jumping ship, saying this is his lifetime job and going to the arch rival Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, Jim Schlossnagle I've followed since he was at UNLV. Then he went to TCU. Of course, I'm a College World Series guy, and they've all been to Omaha. And I've been his biggest fan and supporter until that interview just the other night. He had clearly already taken the job with Texas, and a young reporter doing his job, exactly what they've hired him to do, ask him a question, and then this guy's got to bully the reporter, who I think handled it very, very well. I lost tremendous respect for Schlossnagle, not only in how he dealt with that young media reporter, but he could have answered the question in so many different classy ways by stepping aside and really skirting the issue, saying that he wanted to be with his team. He's given his heart and soul to A&M and sidestepped the issue. Instead, he got PO'd. Clearly, it's come out already that he accepted the job in the regional level of the College World Series. I have a problem with that as well. I don't know that I can consider myself a fan of him anymore as a human. As a baseball coach, I'll have to see what he does at Texas. But let's understand, he's got big shoes to fill there. A guy named Augie Garrido used to coach at Texas and brought them some championships. He came from Cal State Fullerton, and when he made his move, he did it the right way, not like Schlossnagle did. And let's also remember that Schlossnagle was at TCU, A&M, now Texas. He's running out of teams to alienate in Texas, so we better stay at University of Texas for a while. That's my take on that.
The one and only Gamb Lou. Go follow him on Twitter at Gamb Lou. Please go over to the website, sign up, send him an email, and actually, as Lou says, if you got a question, ask the question. Believe it or not, he will answer your question. It's kind of funny. Most people we bring on our shows are the same. We're here for a reason. We're here to educate. We want to make money. We want to answer those questions. And if someone takes the time to ask a question, whether it's a DM or whether it's, an email, we always respond. So the first of many, enjoy yourself on Saturday. I'm jealous as you know what. and have a blast out in Vegas, Lou.
Thanks so much for having me on, Jeff. I look forward to doing this many more times in the future with you.
From myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one and only Lou Vinicaro. Correct?
Well done. You did better with my name than some of these fighters, but we'll get you brushed up on those guys too.
At Gamb Lou, we thank you all so much. In 1 hour, 7 minutes, Brady Kannon will be here with Tea Time Wagers as we go to Detroit Rock City for the Rocket Mortgage. Thank you, everyone, for following. We will see you soon.